All right, so you're ready to bring out some TypeScript talent to your team. That's a great idea. But finding the right developer.
Yeah.
It can feel like going through a maze. But in this mini deep dive, we're going to cut through all the noise and give you all the essential knowledge so you can confidently hire TypeScript developers. ThePerfectDeveloper.com are the authority on this. And we'll be drawing insights from their playbook throughout this deep dive. You know, actually, before we go any further, I highly recommend checking out their 5 questions tool at ThePerfectDeveloper.com right now. It's a fantastic way to get some clarity on exactly what you need in a developer. Now, let's get down to the big question. Why TypeScript? What's all the hype about?
Well, imagine JavaScript, but with superpowers. That's essentially what TypeScript is, a superset of JavaScript. That brings in this thing called static typing. So this lets developers define the types of data their code will handle. It's like having a blueprint that catches errors before they even have a chance to cause any problems.
Okay, that makes sense. So fewer errors, less debugging. But why are TypeScript developers specifically so valuable? Can't a JavaScript developer just learn TypeScript on the fly?
Yeah, it's true that JavaScript developers can pick up TypeScript, but developers who specialize in TypeScript bring this depth of understanding that goes beyond syntax. They're experts at using TypeScript's features, especially for large-scale projects where things can get really complex. It's this specialized knowledge that makes them so sought after.
All right, so we're on board with TypeScript. We get the value that these developers bring. Let's talk skills. What should we be looking for when we're evaluating potential hires?
Well, first and foremost, a really solid foundation in JavaScript is non-negotiable. TypeScript builds on JavaScript, so that's the bedrock. But they also need a deep understanding of TypeScript itself. And I'm not just talking about knowing the basic syntax. Think advanced concepts like generics.
Hold on, generics. You've got to break that down for us a bit.
Of course. So think of generics as a way to write code that can adapt to different data types. It's all about reusability and flexibility, which are so crucial for efficient and maintainable code.
So it's like it's like having a multi-tool instead of separate tool for each task.
Yeah.
Much more efficient.
Exactly. Now, moving on. You'll also want to look for developers who have a strong understanding of popular TypeScript frameworks. These are the power tools they'll be using every day.
We're talking like Angular, React, Node.js, those kinds of things, right?
You got it. Knowing at least one of these is essential. But don't forget about testing and debugging skills too. Those are critical for any developer. A developer who can test their code thoroughly and pinpoint all those pesky bugs is a true asset. And you can really get a sense of this during the interview process.
Speaking of interviews, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? How can we really gauge a candidate's TypeScript expertise?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Resumes only tell part of the story. ThePerfectDeveloper.com has a ton of knowledge on effective interviewing techniques. But one key piece of advice is to incorporate practical coding tests.
You mean actually give them a coding challenge to see how they perform?
Precisely.
Yeah.
Present them with a scenario relevant to your project. Observe their problem-solving process. How do they approach the challenge? How do they debug their code? These are the things that'll separate the truly skilled developers from the rest.
That's a great tip. So we've covered the why of TypeScript and the key skills to look for. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The cost. How much should we expect a budget for a TypeScript developer?
Well, hiring a skilled developer is definitely an investment. But the good news is there's a pretty wide range of options, and the right cost really depends on your needs and where you're looking.
Okay, let's talk numbers. Give us a ballpark range.
Yeah, so for full-time, in-house roles in the U.S., you're typically looking at salaries between $90,000 to $150,000 a year, but this can definitely fluctuate based on experience, location, company size, and demand.
So like a senior developer in Silicon Valley is going to command a higher salary than, say, a mid-level developer in a smaller city.
Exactly. And don't forget about the global talent pool either. You can often find really highly skilled TypeScript developers in Europe or Asia at more competitive rates.
That's a really interesting point. You mentioned global talent, but isn't managing a remote team, especially across time zones, like a lot more complex? How do you weigh those trade-offs?
That's a great question. It's definitely something to consider. ThePerfectDeveloper.com actually has some great resources on that. On managing remote teams effectively, you need to weigh the cost savings against the potential challenges of communication and coordination. But with the right tools and strategies, remote teams can be super effective.
That makes sense. So we've got full-time roles, we've got global options, and then there's also the freelance market. What kind of rates should we expect there?
Yeah, freelance rates can vary quite a bit, anywhere from $25 to $100 per hour. It really depends on the developer's experience, their specialization, and the complexity of the project.
Wow. That's a pretty big spread. So how do you even begin to navigate all of these options and figure out what's the right fit for your needs and budget?
It can definitely feel overwhelming, but it all comes down to a few key considerations. First, what are your project needs? Do you need someone full-time, part-time, or just for a specific project? Second, what's your budget? Be realistic about what you can afford. And finally, think about your company culture and how a new hire might fit in.
So it's not just about technical skills and cost,
Yeah,
but also about finding the right personality and work style for your team.
absolutely. And remember, theperfectdeveloper.com can guide you through every step of this process. Their expertise in finding the best developers is invaluable.
They sound like a fantastic resource. Now, once you've found a potential TypeScript superstar, how do you make sure they hit the ground running and actually want to stay with your company? Onboarding and retention are super crucial, right?
You're absolutely right. Onboarding really sets the tone. For a developer's entire experience at your company, first impressions matter. Make sure their workspace is set up, their accounts are activated, and they have all the tools they need to get started. And just as importantly, make sure they feel welcome. Introduce them to the team. Make them feel like they're part of something special.
It's like that saying, people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. A positive and supportive onboarding experience can make all the difference. But how do you keep that momentum going? How do you retain top talent in such a competitive market?
Retention is all about keeping developers engaged, challenged, and feeling valued. Make sure they have opportunities for professional development, like training courses, conferences, even just time to explore new technologies. It shows them that you're invested in their growth.
That's a great point. Nobody wants to feel stagnant in their career. They want to learn, grow, expand their skill set. What else can we do to keep our TypeScript developers happy and engaged?
Competitive compensation is definitely key. Make sure their salary and benefits are in line with industry standards and reflect their value to the company. But it's not just about the money. Create a work environment where they feel valued, where their ideas are heard, and where they have a voice in decision-making.
So it's about creating a company culture where they feel like they're not just coding robots, but actual contributors who are making a real impact.
Exactly. And don't forget about work-life balance. Offer flexible work arrangements, encourage them to take breaks, and promote a healthy work-life integration. A burnt-out developer is not a productive developer.
It sounds like creating a positive and supportive work environment is just as important as offering a competitive salary and benefits package. But let's be real, sometimes despite our best efforts, developers might decide to move on. It's true, the tech industry. It's so competitive. How can we make our company stand out? Attract the best TypeScript developers.
It's really all about showcasing your company culture and your values. Highlight what makes your company a great place to work. Do you have a strong emphasis on learning and development? Do you offer flexible work arrangements? Do you have a fun and collaborative work environment? These are the things that will really attract top talent.
So it's about selling the whole package.
Yeah.
Not just the job title or salary.
Exactly. And remember, theperfectdeveloper.com can be a valuable partner in this too. They can help you craft a compelling employer brand and reach the right candidates.
They sound like a fantastic resource for any company looking to build a strong TypeScript team. Now, as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one key takeaway you hope our listeners will remember when it comes to hiring TypeScript developers?
I'd say focus on finding the right fit for your team. Don't just look at technical skills. Consider their personality, their communication style, their problem-solving approach. Can you see yourself working with this person every day? Do they share your company's values?
It's about finding someone who's not just technically skilled, but also a good cultural fit.
Absolutely. And remember, building a great team, it takes time. So don't rush the process. Be patient. Do your research. And most importantly, trust your gut. If something feels off, it probably is.
Well, that's excellent advice. So as we leave our listeners to contemplate their TypeScript adventures, what's one final thought-provoking question they can ask themselves as they embark on this hiring journey?
Ask yourself, what kind of team do I want to build? What kind of culture do I want to foster? And then find the TypeScript developers who align with that vision.
That's a great point. When you have a team that's passionate, collaborative, and driven, the possibilities are truly endless. And listeners, if you're ready to take the leap and start building your dream TypeScript team, don't forget to visit theperfectdeveloper.com and try their 5 questions. It's a fantastic tool to help you find the best developer for your specific needs. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of hiring TypeScript developers. We'll catch you next time for another exciting adventure in the world of tech. Until then, happy coding!